What's going on, creative family? It's Dustin Valkema, and welcome back to Fix It in Post. Today we're actually doing a continuation of the feedback critique session that I did for Ernesto Rodriguez. He sent me this image in the email that he sent for feedback and said, dude, I don't know how to handle this hair. I'm dealing with a blonde model on a black background and I get extreme fringing. I have no idea how to fix this. And Ernesto, today we are getting down with it. I will see you in Photoshop, guys. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get started. Alright guys, so here we are in Photoshop with Ernesto's image. It's a beautiful shot, dude. Thanks for sending me your raw file. It's beautiful. So let's get down and mask this out. We'll try to do this as quickly as possible so that we can get to the fringing issue. If you guys haven't seen my masking tutorials using channels, I will just leave a link and a card in this video here. But we will grab the red channel, right click, duplicate channel, and we can just name that gibberish here for now and bring up the levels, Controller Command L. And what we're going to do here is just crank these whites to see how far we can push them. We can push the midtones just a little bit more, maybe. The whites just a little bit. So the left side of the image here is actually looking really good. That's really nice and clean. Primarily what I'm looking at now is the right side here and making sure that we're not breaking these strands of hair. And that's something that can happen very easily. So we'll just want to avoid that if possible. But I think that that should suffice. More than good enough. So we can click OK. We'll grab our dodge tool, which is O. The hotkey is O or Shift O to go through and cycle your different tools here. Not with that selected. Okay, so Shift O and cycle to your dodge tool. We will select highlights in this case and just paint on these outer areas to make sure that those are opaque. They don't always need to be opaque for everybody's images. You know, obviously the further back they get with any type of depth of field, they'll start to lose their opacity a bit. Let's see if we can grab our burn tool and we'll have shadows selected and see if we can actually mask off some of these shadows here that are happening right in between some of these hairs, just to make sure that we get a really good solid clean mask. Now it wouldn't always need to be this crisp. This is really just more, what I'm trying to do here is actually recreate quite a bit of fringing. So let's grab the lasso tool, which is L on the keyboard, and we can just go through and select the entire interior of our model here as much as possible. And what we're doing here is just looking to fill, make sure that we have 100% opacity. So we'll just press X on the keyboard to flip to white as the background color and then press delete. Actually, we'll cancel as Controller Command Delete to fill that with a background color. And we missed some here on the bottom, so we can just repeat that process down here. Controller Command Delete. And at this point, it's quite a good mask. So we can just Controller Command and click this layer mask to make a selection. And we should have duplicated our background image to begin with, but we can just drag that down here to the new layer icon and click a layer mask. So you can see here that now we have a beautiful mask, but horrible fringing. So what we'll do here is create a solid color fill layer and set that to a fairly neutral gray and drag that down below our subject, just so that we can see if there's any harsh black standing out while we're working on this. And above our subjects layer, we can create a new layer. And we can just name this fringe paint or fringe fix. And then press Alt or Option and click in between these two layers here to create a clipping mask. All right, so with that layer in place, let's just go ahead and create a new layer mask just in case we need to remove any of this. But there are really two ways that I might go about removing this kind of dark fringing. One is with a clone stamp tool, and the second is with a brush and just sampling colors and painting my way around the image. So we'll start off with painting, and we can just grab our brush tool. We'll say with a 30% opacity, pen pressure sensitivity on, and we will just sample one of these highlight colors here at the top of our hair, and we can just paint right on top of these flyaways. And you can see that they're now just adopting the color of our sampled area. And most of the time I will go through here and I will sample, say different colors as I'm working my way around the outside here, just so that I can try my best to stay consistent with the hair color. Now, what I don't do is try to keep a very opaque brush, and that's primarily because some of the black fringing can actually help us just kind of build a value in the hair as we go. Like you can see here, like there's still a little bit of fringing, but there's color to the fringing, so I'm not going to be too worried about that until I actually get into compositing and know if I need to fix that or not. Most of the time when I'm doing my work, I typically try to stay as macro as possible until I need to go micro, or I should say that's something I'm working on. Sometimes it's really easy to get in here and say I have to fix every bit of fringing, and most cases you will never see it when you get to a final composite. So we'll just continue our way down, just sampling colors as we go, and just making sure that we're giving some color to all of these flyaways that are going on. And as you can see here in some of these areas, I'm actually using those darker or black values to sort of give a little bit of depth. Just by not painting as hard, it just allows me to quickly have a little bit of a breakup to some of the hairs that are going on there. We'll paint over these, select some highlight colors. So this process actually seems quite a bit harder, when you're dealing with images like this and you don't have a background in mind. I find myself a lot more often, say, needing to or wanting to go and find an actual background first prior to actually doing any of this. And that's so I know exactly what I'll need to paint and what I won't. Sometimes you can actually just cheat quite a lot along the way. So I usually try to look for that when possible. So we'll just keep adding color here. A lot of times when I'm doing this, not as much in this case, but when I'm doing this on my own work, I'll use very broad strokes and then go back and refine. So the little areas like this are when I talk about them in my hair masking with channels tutorial, little areas where you start to see some of, say, a gray color or something that's a little bit darker. I don't worry about that too often. And that's primarily because you lose that in the composite as well, especially when you get to color grading. So it's kind of important just to remember all of the steps that you'll generally take when you get to working on things like this, because the more that you know your process, the more that you understand what you can get away with and what you can't in your own workflow. So we'll just add a little bit more color here. So you can see here that, you still see a little bit of the fringing there, but it's just like a darker value of color versus just the hard black that we had before. And so we can actually just continue this on This is actually one of the areas that I may just use a clone stamp tool with. And so I can select that and just sort of paint that here along this back edge of the hair. And drop the opacity just a little bit, or turn on my sensitivity so that I can fill in a couple of these little areas there as we go. And you just work your way right down the image. Areas that are dark like this that really don't make sense anyways to focus so much on, you know, the color detail that you're putting into the hair. And so now when we get to this back portion, what I'll do is I'll make my brush bigger and see if we can just sample and do large strokes. Because you can see that technically the hair is going the wrong way. But in most cases like this, it still reads as detail, so I won't actually worry about that too much. Like I said, unless you get to compositing and then you realize that you need to actually be a little bit more detail oriented. But these are just really shadow flyaways that won't have a whole lot of color anyways. So at this point, if you get in here and you zoom, you can see that there's still some color information in those shadow flyaways, which is still better than black because it, you know, the black has no color there. But it's still dark anyways, and it brightens it up or gives a little bit more of a contrasting value to match the hair. And then on the left side here, you can see that now we're not dealing with near the fringing that we were dealing with prior to doing this painting. And this is definitely one of those situations where you can go in and get very nitpicky, painting more shadow color and breakups, but this will more than suffice for 90% of the work, so I would call this done at this point. Alright guys, so that wraps up this Fix It in Post video. Thank you, Ernesto, for sending me this image and letting me work through this with you. It's something that we all deal with. I mean, it's been plenty of times that I've dealt with stuff like this, and you know, doing this stuff and getting your hands dirty with this early on is something that you'll never forget as you get more experienced. So thanks for that. Make sure that you guys like, comment, subscribe, click the bell icon so that you get notified when I upload more content, and I will see you guys in the next video.